Well, hello everyone. My name is Tim Cross. I'm senior reporter at VideoWeek, and I'm going to be moderating this session on what do media buyers want from gaming. And I think this is quite an important panel discussion because we're talking today throughout this event about all the exciting and innovative things that you can do around gaming and advertising. But it's obviously important that the things that we create and innovate actually cater to what advertisers want out of gaming. Otherwise, it's not really going to go anywhere. So in this session, we're going to be talking a bit about what it is that brands want out of gaming and what's working well, what advertisers are interested in right now. And to discuss that, we've got three wonderful panelists who I'll let introduce themselves. Rocco, we'll start with you.
Hi, my name's Rocco. I'm the account director over at Venatus Media.
Lucy.
Hi, I'm Lucy Rissik. I'm a CEO and founder of Brotherhood of Brands.
Thanks, and Liam.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brennan. I'm the Global Director of Innovation at MediaCom and also the lead consultant on our digital transformation team, Blink.
Fantastic. So to start with, I want to ask quite a broad question, but basically just to hear what you guys are seeing in terms of advertiser perceptions towards gaming right now, because I mean, me personally, I enjoy playing games. I really like writing about all this stuff, and it's all quite new and exciting to me. So personally, I'm like, yeah, this should be really exciting to everyone, but that's not necessarily the case. You also hear stories of advertisers who still don't really quite understand the space, and who don't really understand the opportunities and think it's quite niche still. So it would be really interesting to hear what you're all seeing. Lucy, perhaps we'll start with you.
Yeah, no, I think that it's actually a very interesting time for gaming. I think we've come from a time where people don't kind of appreciate the power of it very much at all. And actually the pandemic, bizarrely, has had a really big impact on that because people have seen that there are so many people playing more games, there are much more people being engaged, and actually, I mean, the console sales of it have really increased over that time. I think also you're seeing a lot of really big luxury brands getting into the game space, and I think that's also having that sort of correlation effect on everyone else really understanding it. I do think, you know, video games industry is bigger than the movie and music industry combined. And I don't think people have quite realized how engaging it is. And you know, the size of the audience, you know, they still hark back to this 14-year-old boy in his bedroom with a Red Bull. And, you know, that's so different. The games industry is so varied and there's so many different ages and people who play games.
Liam, how about you?
Yeah, I think we've definitely seen an increased interest, and definitely from the pandemic. It's definitely something we've been talking a lot about at MediaCom for a while with our clients, but it may not necessarily have been one that they really paid much attention to because your own behaviors creep into your verdict on what media people consume. So if you're not gaming yourself, often it's difficult to understand the potential around the space. Definitely for us as a reach conversation, everything we do in media is really about reaching the right people. So you know, to Lucy's point, it's bigger than the entertainment industry now. There's a lot of people gaming, whether that's console gaming, casual gaming, or mobile. It represents, I think, a new opportunity to reach people in different times, at different places. But increasingly for some audiences, it's becoming more of a primary media channel. And what's interesting for us too is that there are obviously new players entering the space, Twitch being probably the most obvious one, that are places where people are consuming more media where they would have consumed TV before. And so for us, it's not only a behavior that's interesting to see, but it's also the introduction of new partners, new ways of consuming content, and new opportunities for brands to enter into a space. It's a little bit like sports, if I'm being honest. That's what it feels like to me.
Mm-hmm. Rocco, how about you?
Yeah, I think to echo what Lucy and Liam have both said, it's really coming to the forefront of people's opinions and minds nowadays when it comes to gaming. But one thing that I think is important is that there've been massive PRable events. So be it people, you know, Travis Scott releasing one of his albums and doing that through a Fortnite actual integration, or, you know, a massive esports competition that people are actually starting to see and pay attention to. it's something that is definitely really interesting for planners, but also when it comes to marketers, one of the things that they forget is that it doesn't have to be always these massive big ticket events or integrations, integrations which are PRable. Instead, you know, they're still the base sort of the rich media, the engaging sort of like video, you know, reach, and as Liam was saying, sort of incremental reach when it comes to the right audiences. And one of the things that's interesting is that it's not just, like Lucy was saying, the 14-year-old boy in his basement nowadays. It is everyone. You know, the way in which people are gaming is changing. It's not just console, it's console, PC, mobile, you know, and within each of those sort of core demographic and groups, you can target a different audience. So it's a very exciting time. And when we're talking about some of the non-endemic partners that are starting to really pick this up and take notice, you've got, you know, you have to look at someone like Louis Vuitton, who sponsored the League of Legends World Cup the other year with their case design. Big brands who are, you know, not necessarily endemic or entertainment, they're actually starting to take notice and realize how strong a channel this is to reach the desired audiences.
I want to talk a bit about audiences because a couple of you picked up on that there. I think it is fairly well established at this point. I would hope that anyone working in an agency talking about gaming is, you know, aware of the fact that, sort of, as you both alluded to, it's not just 14-year-old boys sat in their bedrooms drinking Red Bull. So, you know, I'd hope that most buying media around gaming would be aware of that fact. But when we're looking at advertisers and brands, even though there's the awareness perhaps that there are a variety of different audiences out there, which audiences are they actually trying to reach with any sort of gaming campaigns? Are they trying to reach, you know, women who are playing games on their tablets? Are they trying to reach, you know, older blokes who are, you know, into Xbox or whatever? Or are they still, you know, aware that there's different audiences, but actually primarily using gaming to target younger lads? I mean, Rocco, what are you seeing?
I mean, it really depends because you know what the audience is and how you want to reach them. So when you're sort of talking about sort of the younger parental sort of audiences with families, then you know they are inclined to run a lot more sort of mobile heavy activity. Whereas if you're looking a bit more of the more male dominated core console PC gaming audiences, they're still very, very present on, you know, game review, news sites, streaming. In fact, the whole way in which they're actually consuming the day-to-day entertainment is changing from the likes of a linear TV and now changing to digital channels that are surrounded in gaming. So whether or not it's watching someone stream as a form of entertainment, watching personalities, or even someone actually going, all right, well, I'm going to watch that person to understand how to get better at gaming. You know, there's whole communities that have grown and been, you know, exploded in the last 10 years around helping gamers in terms of like giving them little tips and tricks, just like you would do a professional athlete. You know, these people are very passionate, and it's definitely a different channels in which you can reach them.
Liam and Lucy, is that the same as you're seeing?
I think yes, yeah. It's a shift in consumption habits, but also, you know, Rocco mentioned there around like tips and tricks. I do feel that it does resemble sports for that reason. You've got a passion point here which people are interested in, so they want to go watch the content and look at, as you would with any kind of passion point, some will want to go a little bit deeper, and that content might fragment, and there's times which might fragment. And then you've got it being, you know, another type of content that you would watch, like you would watch a sports match and tune in, and the channels you might watch it on. I think often we get hooked on the more hardcore gamers, and typically the reason why brands are wanting to talk to gamers is because they need to reach millennials or Gen Z, because that's their future growth audience. And they go, well, what do they do? Well, they do gaming, so I'm going to get to gaming. But if you go laser focused on gaming, you often restrict your reach capabilities, because there's a lot of people that are interested in gaming, but gamers might be a little bit more hardcore and you won't reach everyone. So I think what's always worth remembering is that the gaming as a thing in what people do is something common across many different age groups. You know, for a long time, the main mobile gamers were stay-at-home mums. That was the highest indexing category in the US. So it's an activity, but it's always remembering the difference between gamers and gaming when you're talking about who you're trying to reach, and the integration you need with either the gaming property or indeed where you're trying to interrupt someone around their activity with branded messaging.
Lucy, how about you? Are you seeing brands sort of trying to reach all sorts of audiences?
Oh, definitely. And, you know, as Liam said, there's without doubt the people who are going millennials, Gen Z, like, this seems the obvious answer. And I think it's really interesting. I think, you know, mustn't forget things like 50% of all gamers are women. So, you know, we see a lot more movement in that space, and a lot more brands that actually, you know, woken up that women are gamers as well. So, you know, that's a fantastic move. And also, you know, I'm loving how different brands are looking at different things. So like Xbox recently did their whole campaign aimed at grandparents to get them to interact more with their grandkids by using gaming. And actually, I quite like that as a different way of looking at audiences. And actually, again, as well, as Liam mentioned about sort of, you know, the mom audience for mobile gaming. And it is one that's still definitely there. And actually, I think when people look at the games industry, they often forget about the woman that's, you know, 35, 40, whatever. And I know I've spoken to brands that are sort of even makeup brands and things like that are sort of going, right, how, you know, we're aimed at 30-year-old women. Are they really gaming? And you're going, God, yes, you know, they all are. They're all doing different things. And people also forget playing Words with Friends is gaming. You are a gamer if you play Words with Friends. You know, you forget how much it's part of people's lives. You know, they see it as that extreme Call of Duty or something like that. And it is very different. But one thing as well, I should also make point of is that, you know, people do have that traditional view of, you know, a Call of Duty or a first person shooter is very male heavy. And actually there is a lot of women playing these games, and sometimes a bit of a different skewed audience than what the traditional look is because of, you know, people hide behind, women often play as men, you know, the data isn't kind of perfect all the time. And actually some of these games have a much broader spectrum than you realize.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to look at a few specific areas. I mean, you know, I think as will be a theme throughout this whole day, gaming means all sorts of different things, and we're talking about opportunities for brands, but I want to look at a few specific ways that brands can invest in and how those are being used. And one is mobile, which we've been talking about a lot already, and it is a place where you can reach all sorts of audiences. But I think with mobile, it's pretty well established that it's good for sort of performance campaigns if you're trying to drive app installs or that sort of thing. You know, that historically has worked pretty well. Whether that continues post all the IFA changes is up for debate, but historically it's been very good for that. But are we seeing big brands invest in mobile gaming? You know, Rocco, you mentioned already, you know, stuff about Louis Vuitton's sort of big League of Legends integration, that sort of thing might be very attractive to big brands. But are they interested in mobile gaming? Liam, are you seeing brands interested in that area?
Oh, very much so. And I'd say that's probably the main area of interest. You know, I think people naturally gravitate to consoles and PCs when they think of gaming, but definitely mobile from a time spent perspective, and also from a time of day perspective is the key one. The great thing about mobile is, and I know we're all stuck at home at the moment, but when we used to commute to work and get on the train, mobile remains a really important touch point for media throughout the day, because you can reach people commuting, you can reach people at their desk if they're not doing their job, you can reach people on their downtime, and you can't do that with things like TV. You can only sort of reach people in the evenings and the mornings. And gaming being such an important part of the mobile experience, it becomes a really important touch point to reach people. The gaming apps and gaming platforms on mobile also have increasingly moved away from having 2, 3, 4s by 60 banners and into things like video interstitials, which is really what brands are after when they're trying to reach consumers. So it's a huge growth area. And I think moving mobile generally is moving away from performance at the moment, because people realize how important that device is in terms of media consumption, and gaming and social media being the top 2 use cases. I think you'll see more and more that the gaming companies are going to either have to upweight their premium nature of their games, or selling different things when the games don't make money, or introduce new ways and new ad units which they can monetize for the freemium games.
How about you two?
Sorry, if you say me, I'll go Rocco.
No, I have to. Come on, Lisa, you go first.
Thank you. No, I was going to say, actually, one of the big ones you definitely see is Pokemon Go. Pokemon Go has totally transformed, how people are interacting with brands massively, on the go with their mobile devices, and the AR, you're seeing huge brands. Obviously it was where the the Gucci North Face collection dropped in game, and you could go out and do things. And, I think it's only going to continue to grow. And also what the other bit that it is happening is that so many more games are having that sort of pick up and play situation. There's more and more turning into where you can go from your PC to your console to your mobile and just carry on that game. And I think that means you'll carry on with even more and more brands and advertisers getting interested in, how do we continue this journey with our user the entire way through.
Go for it, Rocco.
Well, from a mobile point of view, I definitely think brands have really, really started to take notice. So you mentioned the Louis Vuitton stuff that I said earlier, but Gucci most recently did a game where they did a massive promotion. Whoever had the highest score would actually win one of their, I believe it was a handbag. Outside of that, Balenciaga have started to do in-game items. You had Gucci once again embracing gaming the other day by actually creating a Bloxbiz environment in which people can enter. It's all been designed by them. I think brands are starting to realize that, traditional media to reaching new audiences, the strategy has to change. Gaming is no longer, a dirty word. It's one of those lean-in medias, especially when it comes to mobile advertising. And, as long as there's an affinity between the audience and the type of game that they're playing, and there's a good value exchange, like Liam was saying, there's a good value exchange when, people are complementing their usual journey, their advertising experience, and it works really well. Now, you've got stuff like, you talking about DR at the very start of this. That's important. As we all know, it's going to become a lot more difficult with all the privacy concerns that are coming out of play, iOS and everything else. Now, one of the things that I think is really interesting is creating an engaging format that you can do in a mobile environment, relatively easy, to get people to really spend a lot more time and create that brand affinity between that person and that brand. So I think Lucy mentioned it earlier, but makeup brands have been doing this quite a lot. Some of the stuff that we've done with like L'Oreal is creating a bit of a branded experience so they can pick the palette that they actually want to be using, or actually doing some personality quizzes when it comes to reaching the younger audiences, re-engaging them with something a little bit more special. So yeah, it's an exciting way of using branding rather than just DR.
Yeah. I guess at the other end of the spectrum, almost from mobile gaming, which can be more like standard media buys in some ways. You've got esports, which is, I guess usually quite big activations of these massive global events. And esports, has had quite a lot of hype behind it over the years. I think sort of seeing some of the stats about the numbers of viewers that are tuning into these events, and just seeing stadiums filled with people going to watch, the Dota finals or whatever, was very intriguing to a lot of people, and showed the big potential for esports. But the question is, are we seeing it live up to that hype in terms of what it's delivering for brands? Lucy, do you think esports is living up to the hype?
I think it's mixed, to be honest.
Okay.
I have a personal view. I think, esports, when it came out, there seemed to be a lot of brands and companies getting involved, and it almost seeing it as a bit of a tick box situation where they're like, oh, we must do video games, must do something in gaming. Oh, let's just sponsor this. And I think that, people start really questioning it. It seems really unauthentic when you haven't sort of worked out any other activation or kind of, why are you in that space other than, oh my God, it seems like a great idea. You know, and obviously esports has had a bit of issues through the pandemic as well. We have seen sponsorship massively going down, and you know, some companies are very much attuned, like EA. They do all of their esports really is aimed at the broadcast market, and that is. But the other thing we mustn't forget is that, to be honest, a lot of the time with esports, it's the same audience. So you see these big venues, but it's exactly the same audience every time, and that, you know, it is like, how is it going to evolve? But it is, so to me, it's very much still in its sort of infancy in comparison even to the video games industry. And you know, things will grow and change when you see more and more different games becoming esports. And I think that's where it will be interesting. You know, we've got this kind of really hardcore look at the games at the moment of the ones that are there, or, you know, they're very intense. But the more things are opened up, I think, you know, the Fortnite tournaments are really interesting when they do all their kind of rounds through, you know, just people playing at home, and you can see and hear about kids doing amazingly well. But I think we you know, there is still a lot to learn. We haven't embraced it as much in the UK as we have, as Europe has. France has massively embraced esports. So I think, you know, it's a watch and see situation from my point of view. I wouldn't rush to jump into esports. I think it's time to consider it, you know, really consider what you're doing with it. But there is still opportunities out there.
So mixed reviews from Lucy. Liam and Rocco, do you agree with that?
I would probably agree with that. I think it really depends on the country which you're talking about when you say how successful it's been. I think what's really interesting about esports is that it's one of the first sort of global trends in media to come out of Asia. You know, if you have this conversation, China especially, China, Japan, Korea, you're going to have it's a much more mainstream sport. So you've got probably a much wider audience you could talk to there. And it is, I've spent a lot of time in Japan because my family's half Japanese. So it does appear on TV there, and some of the people that play games and even TV stars go into esports. There's a bit of crossover there, and that's helping mainstream. But outside of Asia, Lucy's right, it's quite limiting. It's the same people over and over again that are watching it typically. Depends on the sport they're playing, the esport they're playing. I think for brands, what's interesting about it is that it offers a immediate global opportunity than necessarily a local one. So using the sports analogy again, if you're like the cricket's on at the moment here, if you're sponsoring the cricket, you're probably going to get viewership on UK terrestrial and in New Zealand as well, because they're playing that match. But if you're sponsoring a live stream on Twitch of a League of Legends match, you've got an immediate global audience. That to me is interesting, because suddenly you start to break down the barriers that terrestrial media start to put around some of their sports. And because the platforms that some of these esports are appearing on are global, you can reach a lot of people very quickly, if that's the sort of audience they're going after. And I think that's the important thing to always remember. When you're doing any kind of sponsorship, it's like, who are the people that are actually watching this and where are they based? And even though you might have, 200 million people watching a League of Legends final, are they middle-aged people? Are they people based in the markets you're trying to grow? Or are they largely Eastern Asian-based millennials and Gen Z? And if that's right for you, then go for it. If it's not, make sure you diversify what you're trying to do.
Yeah. I want to look, so we've looked at sort of some of what's happening right now. I want to look at some of the emerging opportunities. And my question to all of you would just be, which innovations that we're seeing, maybe around ad formats or just around gaming in general, are mostly exciting to you from an advertising perspective? I mean, I guess, the things that I hear about mostly are things around in-play advertising, I guess you call it, rather than in-game can be quite vague as to what that means. But in-play, putting ads in the actual gaming world, or metaverse comes up quite a lot, and those sort of big activations in these shared worlds. But I want to pre-guess your answers, so I'll hear from you guys. Rocco, what most excites you about what's coming up in gaming?
What I really enjoy is to start to see in-game opportunities really blow up. I know that's kind of a bit of a buzzword at the moment, because not a lot of people have done it really well at the moment. Now, creating an in-game environment which actually works with the person playing the game is super important, because you have to complement their normal user journey, right? And when we think about in-game ads, it shouldn't just, it could be an interstitial, which is great because you're on lean-in media when you're on your mobile. But let's say something like a partner that we have, which is called Blockbix, they basically run in-game ads within a Roblox environment, but very much complementing your journey. Just like you would be walking outside in Piccadilly and you'd see the massive ad hoardings. You know, it's the same sort of thing. You've got this virtual world, which you're not taking anything away from it. You're just giving an opportunity for someone to see an ad. Very much top line brand opportunities, which, you know, once again, is a little bit more difficult to track. But the true value of that is real time spent, you know, watching that ad, seeing that branded activation. And it's something that is going to be increasing. It's going to get better. And I especially think with the emergence of free-to-play games, it's going to become more of the norm.
Lucy, how about you?
I definitely kind of, you know, agree a bit with Rocco as well. The in-game parts are really interesting, and I personally do things a lot more to do with the collab space as well. And you know, I think that's only going to grow. We're going to see more and more. And actually, even from brands involved with that, that's sort of direct to consumer as well. So, you know, in-game purchases that you can then go and buy things immediately, they turn up at your door, you know, that sort of front to end sort of situation. I think you'll probably see more personalization even further. But what's interesting, you know, is even people like Roblox as well within the gaming space. I know they are slowly not seeing themselves as a game, but as a social media platform, because of the way their consumers interact with it. And I think that that's how we'll see it, which will mean more personalization, very much like we get in social media platforms. But I think it's interesting, and you know, the more the world has woken up to the games industry, the more brands that really want to get involved, the more innovation we're going to see, and sort of the growth that is there is huge. And I think it's a really exciting time, to be honest.
Liam, perhaps just quickly from you, what's
I mean, I talked about a video opportunity before, but I think what's the opportunity that hasn't been explored is probably the same one we'd have a conversation around UFC 5-10 years ago, is that there's probably not a lot actually in the event itself to sponsor, but actually you've got superstars that are in these games, people playing it. You've got the actual events themselves, brands creating partnerships like Adidas with Ninja, making his own shoes that he can wear and promote. Understanding, like seeing these people as celebrities and seeing these as big events. It's a very similar sports marketing approach. And yes, there'll be inventory we can buy, but I think that to me is the really interesting space for brands that might be kind of working with or trying to reach, sorry, I should say, millennials and Gen Zs, looking at these people like the new musicians or like the new movie stars that are playing these games and opening up those opportunities to reach those audiences that follow these people and are interested in what they have to do and what they have to say.
Yeah. So we've looked a lot at sort of a lot of the exciting parts about gaming. I guess I want to touch on a few of the things which can perhaps be more sticking points for brands. The first, which has been a big topic obviously across the advertising recently, is changes around privacy. Most relevant probably to gaming is, as we've alluded to before, Apple's IDFA changes. Perhaps I'll come straight back to you with this one. Are we seeing, you know, post the IDFA changes, are we seeing that have a substantial impact on how brands are planning their media in gaming, or not yet?
Well, I think the big blocker at the moment for gaming is brand safety, and that's because some of the games are quite violent, and because you often have no control over where the brands appear. You know, the biggest games, you know, they don't want to have someone's head being blown up in front of a big Pepsi logo. Or maybe some brands do, but a lot of brands are quite hesitant to get involved in that. And also there's often, for many brands that advertise products that can't be shown at under 16s, there's often difficulty restricting your placements from being seen by under 16. So there's a few blockers there that need to be overcome. But in terms of IDFA specifically, obviously mobile gaming is huge, but also it's the long tail often of usage of mobile. So if you look at some of the data coming back from people like AppsFlyer and Flurry, what you're seeing is like the gaming part of the apps is being affected, because often these are the ones that people are opting into less than, say, utility-based apps. So the ability to retarget people across apps within the gaming environment is probably going to be hampered quite heavily from that. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing, because context is still very important and reach is important. But certainly if you're looking at monetizing, you're making games that have a lifespan of 2-3 weeks until they're out of the app store, you're in a bit of trouble, because you're not getting that retargeting money from Facebook Audience Network or from MoPub on Twitter anymore. So I think it's a watch out for some of the smaller mobile industry players rather than say that, the likes of Epic Games and Activision and people like that.
Yeah, yeah. I guess alongside privacy, one thing I hear about a lot as well, as a bit of a roadblock is measurement, or rather the lack of it. I mean, again, obviously talking about gaming, the difficulty is that, measurement is different for all the different, areas that you can invest in. But nonetheless, in sort of all areas, I guess, I hear about concerns around measurement and the fact that, a lot of the time, especially on some of the newer ad formats, measurement has been done in-house because third-party companies, it's starting to change now, but third-party companies haven't been able to cater to it yet. Measurement standards are slightly different from what advertisers are used to elsewhere. Rocco, do you think measurement and sort of issues around it is still a bit of a problem, and do you think it is a roadblock to investment?
So, just with the emphasis of any sort of like digital advertising, we had to come up with new ways in which to quantify, success, whether or not it's really strong view-through rates, viewability, clicks, traffic on site, whatever it might be. Those are still really strong for us. I don't think that that's a problem. Now, when the problem might come into play is when we start to discuss new mediums. So in-game ads, how do you quantify an impression on screen? Now, that's a really good conversation to have, because then you're going to go, all right, well, we almost have to be overly secure, overly obvious about, someone's actually spent a good amount of time looking at that ad, having that fully in view. And because we're working within digital channels for the most part, it's very much something that we can quantify, we can measure, and we can report back on. It's just about sometimes having those security measures, let's say by IAS or Moat or whoever it might be able to keep up with these innovations and how to quantify these sort of measurement tools.
Yeah. Lucy and Liam, do you think measurements are a roadblock at the moment?
Go for it, Liam.
Oh, okay. I think generally, all digital measurement is being affected at the moment by what's going on. I don't think specifically for gaming more than anywhere else, except for maybe some of the more abstract placements within games. I think they're a bit challenged. But yeah, everything at the moment to do with measurement in digital is in a little bit of a funny place. And certainly, the quicker we can get a resolution from the larger players and what they're actually going to offer long term, the quicker we can go back to advertising to people in a privacy first way, but also actually understanding whether our advertising is working or not.
Yeah, for sure. How about you, Lucy?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I know that generally it is an easy space to try and measure anything like this, but I think it's true exactly what Liam and Rocco are saying. The digital space has these issues anyway. I mean, the only difference I think with gaming is that they are a hyper engaged audience. They generally, you can't dual screen, triple screen, everything else, and that hopefully by actually going for this kind of hyperspace of like, this is something they're super interested in, they're doing, is slightly better than just sort of putting something out there that you hope someone's going to catch between getting a cup of tea and doing their ironing, and you have got someone's focused attention with it.
Yeah, for sure. Brilliant. We're running out of time, but just a slightly fun question to round us off, to also get a sense of where you guys think the most value is. So the question to put to you is, if you had $1 million to invest, or £1 million, whichever you prefer to work in, to reach gaming audiences, where would you spend it out of? Video display ads, probably on platforms like Twitch or YouTube Gaming or wherever. On gaming influencers, the superstars that Liam was talking about earlier, on an esports team or event sponsorship, or some other area that you would prefer. Rocco, we'll start with you.
I know everyone will be excited with the whole idea of an esports sponsorship, and while that's great, that $1 million could disappear in an instant. Now, I think one of the things that I think Liam was talking about was reach earlier, and if we use traditional sort of mediums, be it video, rich media, display, then that $1 million could actually go really, really far within those communities, and not just reach some of the more niche ones, but the real upper funnel ones as well. So you'll get some great coverage.
Great. Lucy, where would you put your 1 million?
I think it needs to be a little mixture of everything. I think you need to, let's create something holistic, exciting, authentic to the audiences, I would be looking at, spending money working with a games company, doing some amazing collaboration, to be honest, but then, making sure it has those multiple touch points. How do you speak with influencers, with advertising? How do you pull it all together, create an amazing event as well? And have impact and lasting impact. Long term is better than trying to do like one hit situations. And I think that way, you'll have a bigger impact and, grow it outside normal channels. That's what you want. You want press to pick up on things in a different way. And, that's how I would be spending the money.
Okay. And Liam, how about you?
The media planner in me wants to agree with Lucy and have a very sensible approach to understanding where the audiences are and distributing your money. But I think the risk taker in me would say spend that on long-term sponsorship. Gamers in particular are quite cynical. And when some of the work that we've done where we've just advertised around gaming content, we tend to get pretty bad feedback from users actually, and the brand scores tend not to go up. So going in and actually working with gamers, influencers, esports teams, sponsoring events builds, I think the gamers will learn to love your brand a little bit more, and then they'll be a little bit more open to you and doing more interruptive advertising in the future. And you can see that for brands like Red Bull and Adidas, who have been in that space for a while. There's a lot more love for their brands, and they feel a lot more, there's a lot more cohesion between their paid advertising and that community than perhaps someone just coming in, doing 3 months of pre-rolls and then buggering off again afterwards.
Yeah. I mean, that's certainly something I consistently hear talking about gaming, is the importance of being a consistent presence in the space, and that you're not perceived to just be doing a quick hit, not understanding the space at all and then leaving, but that you actually understand the audience, understand the games that you're advertising in, because especially hardcore gamers can be sometimes negatively reactive towards advertising, but also heard plenty of success stories of companies that have spent the time, have got to know the audiences in the games, and have had really great results as well. Brilliant. Well, I think we had a pretty comprehensive discussion about what advertisers are interested in. So thank you to all of you. Thank you very much to my panel.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thanks, everyone.